I wasn't looking for anything that morning. That's the part that sticks with me. I wasn't snooping, wasn't suspicious, not yet. I was just trying to find the tire inflator. Simple as that. Brooke had taken it a few weeks ago when her car's pressure light came on, and like most things in our house, it ended up wherever she left it. So I opened the trunk of her car expecting clutter, reusable bags, maybe some gym gear. Instead, I found something that didn't belong. It was sitting neatly in the corner, almost too neatly. A small velvet pouch, tied shut with a gold ribbon like a boutique gift. Inside was a bracelet. Slim, delicate, real gold, with a small capital R engraved on the inner band. Not a heart, not a quote, just the one letter, R. I turned it over in my hand, confused. Brooke didn't wear gold. Her jewelry was mostly silver or stainless steel, minimal, practical. I know I'd bought half of it. This wasn't hers. It didn't even look like her taste. Underneath the pouch was a receipt folded into a tight square. It had that thick, expensive texture you only get at hotels that charge you for breakfast separately. The name at the top stopped me cold. Riverside Grand Hotel. Brooke had mentioned that place before. Something about a renovation project or a client dinner. I couldn't quite remember. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach twist. Room for 2, it said. 2 guests. 1 king bed. 2 nights. Last weekend. I stood there a long time, the trunk still open, morning sunlight catching on the polished metal of the bracelet. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. A slow, creeping unease, like when you walk into a room and forget what you came in for except heavier. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a work thing. Maybe someone else had left it there. Maybe the R was for a vendor's brand name. Maybe. I closed the trunk, took the receipt and bracelet, and headed inside. My hands were cold. Not from the weather, just that weird kind of numbness that hits when your brain's trying to reject something your gut already knows. In the kitchen, I noticed another detail. A bottle of wine stood on the counter, unopened. Not unusual at first glance, but it wasn't ours. Neither of us had bought it. And it wasn't cheap. It had one of those European labels with gold foil on the neck and a cork instead of a twist cap. The kind of wine that shows up at anniversary dinners or upscale hotels. Not something we kept in the house. Beside it, a single wine glass. Clean, mostly, but there was a faint smudge of lipstick on the rim. Not Brooke's usual color. She wore rose tones, soft pinks. This was darker, Berg *NDY, maybe even maroon. Not a shade I'd ever seen her in. I leaned closer and sniffed the rim. It didn't smell like her. Perfume clung to the edge. Floral but musky. Like something you'd wear out late. Not to a meeting. That's when I heard the front door open. Brooke stepped in, keys jingling in her hand, her expression unreadable. She didn't seem surprised to see me, but she did pause just slightly when she caught sight of me standing at the counter. Her eyes flicked to the wine glass, then to the bracelet in my hand. "Hey," she said casually, as if I hadn't just stumbled into something that felt like the start of a movie I didn't want to watch. She looked composed, polished. Her shirt was crisp, ironed to perfection, the same one she'd worn yesterday. I only recognized it because she'd spilled salad dressing on it during dinner, right before she said she had some emails to finish, and disappeared into the home office for the night. "That stain? Gone now. Where'd you find that?" she asked, nodding toward the bracelet. Not alarmed, just curious. Too curious. "In your trunk," I said. "Next to this." I handed her the receipt. Her eyes scanned it without flinching. "Oh yeah, that's from work," she said smoothly. "It's a comped room. We're doing a promo with vendors at Riverside Grand. That one was part of a corporate gifting demo. I'm pretty sure I told you about it." She hadn't. "And the bracelet?" "A sample," she said, as if the answer was obvious. "Same campaign. We're vetting a bunch of custom luxury items for holiday client packages. You wouldn't believe what people will spend on engraving." She smiled like it was some inside joke. Her tone was steady, her posture relaxed. She wasn't defensive. If anything, she sounded bored with my questions. like she was going through a list she already knew by heart. Then she checked her phone. I've got to head out in 15. Meeting contractors downtown. Pause. Work stuff, nothing personal. That's when I knew. Not everything, not the whole story, but enough to realize that something was cracked. Maybe it had been for a while and I just hadn't seen it. The explanations were too convenient. Too clean. I'd heard her lie before, small things, harmless ones. Like telling her boss she was stuck in traffic when she'd just overslept. Or saying she didn't get a text when I'd seen the read receipt. This wasn't that. This was rehearsed, polished, performed. The bracelet wasn't just a bracelet. The receipt wasn't just a receipt. And her tone, calm, almost clinical, didn't belong to someone trying to clarify an innocent misunderstanding. It belonged to someone used to covering tracks. Someone who'd already prepared for this conversation. Still, I nodded. Said, okay. I didn't push. Not yet. I told myself maybe I was overthinking it. But that night, after she left for her so-called contractor meeting, I sat on the couch in the dim kitchen, staring at the receipt again. My thumb traced the date, then the time, then the two guests line. I tried to picture her in that hotel room. Tried to picture who R might be. Tried to picture what else I hadn't noticed. And I felt it, the first real shift. That quiet but undeniable break in the foundation. Not enough to collapse the house, but enough that you feel the draft even with the windows closed. For the first time in our marriage, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't know who I was sleeping next to anymore. After Brooke left that night, said something about needing to check the site layout before next week's walkthrough. I just sat there, didn't turn on the TV, didn't grab a drink, just sat in the kitchen in the quiet, like someone waiting for an aftershock that never comes. But the earthquake had already happened. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I kept the bracelet on the table in front of me, next to the receipt. I must have stared at them for an hour. There was something symbolic about that tiny R. How subtle it was, how sure it must have felt to whoever gave it to her. One letter, like a mark left in a place no one was supposed to look. And her story. It bothered me more the longer I replayed it. Not because it was outlandish, the opposite. It was so reasonable, so textbook. A gift sample? A comped hotel room? A wine bottle for client tasting? It wasn't the kind of story someone panicked and threw together. It was curated, smoothed out at the edges. The kind of lie that had been used before. And that's when I started thinking about all the other small things I had overlooked. The ones I'd brushed off because they didn't quite count as red flags on their own. Like her phone. She used to leave it everywhere. Living room, nightstand, even in the bathroom while she showered. It buzzed like crazy back then. Friends, work group chats, the occasional meme from her sister. But a few months ago that changed. First, it was a new password. Then it was a new pattern password. Then it was face down at dinner. Then do not disturb became her phone's default setting. Once or twice I picked it up to hand it to her, and the way she reacted, like I just reached for her diary. Overprotective. Not hostile, but guarded. Then there was the perfume. Brooke had always worn light fragrances, citrusy, clean. She didn't like anything musky. Said it reminded her of department store spritzers from her college days. But lately she smelled different. Heavier. Richer. Something that lingered in the air even after she'd left the room. I'd asked once. She laughed and said it was probably the testers they passed around at the office, one of the new vendor lines. But she said it too fast. Too offhand. Like she knew I'd noticed and was ready for it. Same thing with her book club. That had started earlier in the year, once every 2 weeks, sometimes more. First, I thought it was great. She needed an outlet outside of work, outside of me. But the odd part? She never talked about the books. Never left one on the nightstand. Never had a reading list. When I asked once what the current book was, she hesitated, actually paused, before saying something vague like, "Oh, it's about family trauma," kind of abstract. Family trauma? Abstract? That was the same night she came home late, perfectly made up and a fresh manicure. She said they'd stayed late at a wine bar near the studio. She smiled when she told me, A little too much. Then there was the Instagram story. Brooke barely posted anymore. Maybe once a month, usually a travel sh*t or a dinner pic. But one story stood out. A photo from a hotel balcony, captioned, "Not a bad view for a work gig." I didn't think much of it at the time. Just another conference, maybe some client mixer. But now, with the receipts sitting in front of me, Riverside Grand Hotel, I remembered something. The view in that photo. It matched a room I'd stayed in once for a friend's wedding. The same skyline angle. The same arched iron balcony. And I remembered how she said it was for a design expo on the west side. Riverside wasn't even close to the west side. I pulled out my phone and started checking her public posts, her tagged photos. Nothing suspicious. But when I went into our shared Google account, something we barely used anymore, I found the GPS history. She hadn't turned it off. 3 weekends in the last 2 months, Riverside Grand. Each time, listed as overnight. Not one-night stops. Multiple hours logged in the district. She hadn't mentioned any hotel stays in weeks. My chest tightened. Not from panic, but from something slower. Heavier. The realization that I had been collecting the pieces for a long time without knowing it. I remembered the time she said her coworker Rachel needed a ride to a conference. But when she came back, she was wearing heels and a dress I hadn't seen before. Not the flats and blazer she left in. I remembered how her stories, once effortless and full of detail, had become vague, short, careful. She used to tell me about annoying clients, rude guests, even the weird art installations she saw. Now I got summaries. It went well. Long day. Nothing exciting. And then, a memory I hadn't thought of in weeks. A car ride home when she mentioned a guy named Reeves. Said he was funny but full of himself. A new account director who transferred from their Texas office. I hadn't heard that name since. But that's when the letter R started ringing in my head all over again. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Brooke texted someone from the bathroom. I could hear the soft taps on the screen behind the door, followed by silence. She came out smiling, said goodnight, kissed my cheek, and turned away. I watched her for a long time after that. Her breathing evened out. Her arms curled under the pillow. She looked like the same woman I married. Same freckles on her shoulder. Same little scar by her collarbone from that time she fell off a bike in Maine. But something was different. Something had shifted between us, or maybe within her, and now I couldn't unsee it. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband, the one who digs through messages or hires a private investigator or starts tracking his wife's location. But I also didn't want to be the guy who was lied to while staring straight into the lie. The next day, while she was in the shower, I checked the rideshare history on our shared credit card. She always used the same app when she went out. I didn't find much at first. A few regular routes, downtown and back. But then a pattern emerged. Weekends. Same drop-off point. A block from the Riverside Grand. 3 times. All on nights she said she was with the girls or late at the studio. All matching the GPS history. All lining up too perfectly. It was no longer a chain of coincidences. It was just a chain. Every link I found tightened around the version of her I thought I knew. Every maybe became a likely. Every doubt became a thread I couldn't unpull. And still I said nothing. I didn't confront her. Didn't even hint that I knew. Because at that point I wasn't looking for a denial. I was waiting for the moment I couldn't be lied to anymore. Something in me had changed. I wasn't just suspicious now. I was preparing. I didn't act right away. I could have. I had more than enough to start a fight. GPS logs, rideshare records, a bracelet engraved with another man's initial. But if you've ever been on the edge of something life-altering, you know the strange thing about it. You don't always jump. Sometimes you just stand there. You watch. You wait. You need the kind of truth that doesn't stutter when you say it out loud. So I stayed quiet. I smiled when she got home. I asked about her day. I folded laundry, cooked dinner, watched the show we were halfway through. From the outside, we looked normal, maybe even happy. But inside, I was listening for cracks in every word she said. And then, she handed me the moment herself. It was a Wednesday. She was dressed sharp, Business formal. The navy blue dress I remembered from our anniversary dinner 2 years back. The one she said she hadn't worn since. Her makeup was clean, understated, but her perfume was stronger than usual, and her hair had that fresh salon shine. "I've got a business dinner," she said, smoothing the front of her dress. "Skyline Plaza Hotel. It's for the new partnership launch. Presentations, then dinner. Shouldn't be too late." I nodded almost casually. "Partners from out of town?" "Yeah, big guys. Real estate firm from New York, I think." She grabbed her purse, checked her lipstick in the hallway mirror, and added, "Wish me luck." She kissed me on the cheek, one of those automatic, ghost-like pecks that doesn't linger, and walked out the door. That should have been the end of it. Just another evening in a long list of just work events. But it wasn't. The moment the door closed, I grabbed my keys. No hesitation. No internal debate. I didn't even know what I was going to do. Confront her? Watch? Record? None of it mattered. I needed to see it. With my own eyes. I needed it to stop being possible and become real. The Skyline Plaza was just across town. I parked behind the building, away from the valet, away from the lights. The hotel had a rooftop terrace, usually reserved for corporate events. I knew the layout. Years ago, Brooke and I had attended a wedding there, and I remembered sneaking out to the terrace with her, stealing slices of cake and pretending to be drunker than we were. Funny how the same place can mean two entirely different things in one lifetime. I took the service stairwell, climbed in silence, hand trailing the rail. The moment I opened the door to the terrace, the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter filtered out like a soundtrack to someone else's life. A soft jazz trio played near the bar. People milled about, wine glasses in hand, small plates balanced on napkins. I stayed behind the glass, just inside the stairwell, out of view. From there, I could see the entire terrace. And then I saw her, Brooke, standing near the railing, backlit by string lights. She looked calm, confident. The way she tilted her head when someone made a joke. The way she touched her hair when she laughed. Her smile wide, but not fake. Familiar, but not mine. Beside her stood a man. Tall, well-dressed, mid-40s maybe. Sharp gray suit, no tie. One hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly on her lower back. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched. He leaned in and whispered something into her ear, and she tilted her head toward him, grinning. Then, without hesitation, without checking who was around, she turned, placed her hand gently against his chest, and kissed him. It wasn't clumsy or impulsive. It wasn't hidden. It was deliberate, comfortable, like two people who'd done it 100 times before. My chest didn't explode. My knees didn't buckle. There was no soap opera gasp or shattering glass. What I felt was cold. Not empty, just frozen. Like my body knew something my heart hadn't caught up to yet. And on her wrist, shimmering under the terrace lights, was the bracelet. The same one I'd found in her trunk. The one with the R. It didn't even feel like betrayal in that moment. It felt like clarity. The kind of truth that doesn't ask permission. I stepped back from the door. No one had seen me. The music swelled behind the glass, and laughter rolled over the terrace like fog. But I didn't hear it anymore. I walked back down the stairwell, every footstep echoing like punctuation. Back in the car, I sat still for a long time. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't punch the steering wheel or call a friend. What I felt wasn't rage. It was finality. Like a lock sliding into place. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, scrolled to the few photos I'd taken just before stepping back. One of Brooke, one of the man, one of the kiss. Clean, clear, timestamp glowing in the corner. No ambiguity. I saved them, then tucked the phone away. And that was it. No more doubts. No more wondering. She hadn't slipped. She'd made a choice. A full, unapologetic public choice. With her hand on his chest and his hand on her back, under soft music and champagne glasses. Whatever came next, I wasn't chasing answers anymore. I had them. All of them. And something in me, something I didn't know I was waiting for, settled. I drove home in silence. Didn't even turn on the radio. The lights of the city blurred in the windshield as I passed through block after block, but none of it mattered. I had nothing left to guess, nothing left to rationalize. It was over. Not just the denial, not just the marriage, but the performance. All of it. Done. And in the quiet hum of the engine, I made my first real decision in months. It was time to stop wondering. It was time to start acting. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was in pain, not in the way I expected, at least. It wasn't the guttural heartbreak people talk about. No sobbing into a pillow. No screaming into the dark. Just this strange, crisp stillness in my chest. Like every emotion had been drained out and replaced with ice water. I sat in the living room for hours. No lights, no distractions. Just the soft glow of the street lamp bleeding through the window blinds and the weight of finality settling over everything. I wasn't confused anymore. That was the difference. For weeks I'd been living in a maze of half-truths and hopeful denial, piecing together inconsistencies and praying I was wrong. But now, I had the truth. Undeniable. Documented. Stamped. Seared into memory. She kissed him. She wore his bracelet. She smiled like a woman who had already decided where her loyalty belonged. And she did it in public, under lights, on a rooftop, dressed in the same navy blue dress she once wore to meet my parents. That part stuck with me. That she chose that dress, as if this new version of her needed to repurpose the symbols of our past. It wasn't rage I felt anymore. It was purpose. By the time the sun began leaking through the curtains, I knew exactly what I had to do. So I made coffee, a habit more than a need, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it plainly, Brooke, Evidence. I started with the photo I took the night before, her and Reeves clear as glass. Then I added the Riverside Grand receipt. Screensh *TS of GPS history. Uber receipts. The wine glass photo with the lipstick. Text logs with timestamps. Everything that had once felt like paranoia now lived in one organized dossier. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. If Brooke had decided our marriage was optional, then I needed to treat it like a contract, one she had already violated. And if she thought this was just going to slide quietly under the rug, she was going to learn just how closely I'd been paying attention. After the folder was complete, I compressed it into a zip file and sent it to two people. My lawyer, who I hadn't officially hired yet but had consulted once out of caution, and Brooke's company's internal compliance officer. That second one took a bit more digging. I found the contact buried in a public company policy PDF. Ethics and partnerships oversight. I didn't add commentary. No dramatic message. Just the facts. Just the file. Timestamped. Traceable. Let the documentation speak for itself. I didn't warn Brooke. I didn't hint. I didn't try to schedule a talk. She wanted to live two lives. Now they would collide on their own. And once that was done, I closed the laptop, stood up, and, for the first time in what felt like weeks, breathed without pressure. The air in the house still held that artificial floral scent from her last load of laundry, but it no longer made me feel sick, just detached. Later that afternoon, she came home. Her heels clicked across the floor with the same confident rhythm. Her keys dropped into the bowl by the door like they always did. She didn't know yet. I watched her walk into the kitchen. She looked tired. Her eyes lingered on me a little longer than usual, like she was assessing whether she still had control of the narrative. "How was your day?" she asked, pulling out a water bottle from the fridge. "Productive," I said. She nodded. "Mine too. That event went long, though. I'm wiped." I didn't respond. I just looked at her. That same calm smile on her face. That same practiced ease in her voice. Like nothing had happened. She poured her water, took a long sip and said, "I think I'm going to turn in early. Tomorrow's packed." I almost laughed. Instead, I just nodded. "Sure," I said. "Good night." She left the room. I didn't follow. She didn't know that everything was already in motion. The next day, it began. The email from my lawyer came in first. Short, precise. "Got it. We'll draft filing for asset division. Let me know when you're ready to move." Then, About 4 hours later, came the call from Brooke. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hey, I just got a weird email from HR. Can we talk? Something's up. Something was definitely up. By evening, I heard her come in through the door much earlier than usual. No keys dropped. No heels. Just soft, slow footsteps. She peeked into the living room, her face pale, the bracelet gone from her wrist. We need to talk, she said. Her voice wasn't calm now, not like before. I said nothing, just met her eyes. There's been a misunderstanding, she started, walking in and sitting at the edge of the couch like she was afraid it might bite her. HR says there's an inquiry, an internal audit. I don't know what's going on. Don't you? I asked. She swallowed. This isn't what you think. What do I think it is? She hesitated. I know you're upset. I should have told you about Reeves. But that night, the kiss, it wasn't personal. It was part of the event. Symbolic, like a PR thing. My silence must have unnerved her. She stood up, crossed her arms, then let them fall. I know how it looked, she said more defensively now. But it wasn't real. And even if it was, it wasn't serious. Nothing serious happened. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her. And in that silence, something shifted in her expression. She realized I wasn't playing the game anymore. Ethan, she said softly, voice breaking for the first time. Please, can we just talk? Really talk? I stood. Not tonight, I said. There's nothing to say tonight. She watched me walk past her, stunned. And I'll admit, there was a part of me that felt power in that moment. Not dominance, not revenge, just clarity. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. I was finally the one in control of the truth. By the end of that week, everything started to fall apart. For her, I didn't watch it unfold with satisfaction. I didn't gloat, but I noticed it. She came home less confident each day. A wrinkle in her forehead that hadn't been there before. The phone calls became hushed. The arguments over text grew longer. Then came the announcement. Her partner, Reeves, had resigned. Quietly, no explanation. She never wore the bracelet again. Her smiles became rarer. Her explanations clumsier. One night, she stayed on the patio until almost midnight, just sitting there in the dark. I didn't go out. I didn't ask. A few days later, she came to me with a long message typed into her notes app. She didn't read it aloud, just handed me the phone. It was filled with qualifiers. I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to feel alive again. I didn't think it would get this far. At the end, a final plea. Can we please try to fix this? I'll do anything. I want my life back. But that was the problem. She didn't want me back. She wanted her life back. Her comfort. Her image. The version of reality she could still manipulate. And I realized then, she hadn't been apologizing. She'd been negotiating. 2 days after Brooke handed me her long-winded confession, everything she had worked to protect began to fall apart. The first official sign was a corporate-wide email, phrased in that deliberately vague way HR departments favor. Words like realignment, compliance, and external review. I wasn't copied on it, of course. But a friend of mine who worked peripherally with her team forwarded it to me without comment. Attached was an updated org chart. Brooke's name was missing. When she got home that evening, I could tell before she even stepped inside. She opened the front door quietly, no high heels, no phone call in progress. Her bag was slung low, and her makeup had worn off around her eyes. She looked like someone who had lost more than a job. She stood in the hallway for a few seconds before finally saying it aloud. They've suspended me. I didn't respond. They said it's standard, she added quickly. That it's procedural. Just something they have to do until the review is done. I nodded slowly. Of course. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was trying to read me, trying to gauge how much I knew or cared. You think I deserve this, don't you? I didn't answer because she didn't ask it like a question. She asked it like a setup, a test. One last ploy for sympathy. But this wasn't about sympathy anymore. This was cause and effect. You know, she continued after a long pause, none of this started because I hated you. She sat down at the edge of the couch, twisting the strap of her bag. I don't even know how it started, Ethan. I think I was trying to feel something. We were in a routine. I was disappearing into it. I'd get home, and you'd be in the kitchen, and I'd think, is this it? Not because it was bad, because it was. Still. Her voice trembled. And Reeves, I didn't love him. He noticed me. It started with jokes at work. Little things. Harmless. She looked up, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I should have stopped it. I know that. But every time I thought about ending it, I'd already crossed another line. And the lies, they just got easier. Her shoulders slumped. And then you knew. And instead of exploding, you just watched me. Like you were waiting for me to self-destruct. I finally met her eyes. I wasn't waiting, I said. You were already doing it. She nodded, tears streaming down now. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I'll say it 100 times if that's what you need. I don't need anything from you anymore, I said, and I meant it. For the next week, she stayed in the guest room. There were no more arguments, no new lies, no desperate declarations. Just silence. Once in a while, I'd hear her crying behind the door, but I never checked on her. The version of Brooke I had built a life with didn't exist anymore. She'd been gone long before I found that bracelet. And on Friday she moved out. No dramatic scene. No shouting or last-minute begging. Just 2 suitcases and a box of clothes she didn't want to leave behind. She didn't say goodbye, not really. Just looked back once before closing the door, eyes swollen and red. The house was quiet afterward, eerily so. I walked through the rooms she had once dominated, now stripped of her presence. Her toothbrush gone. Her coat from the hallway. The candle she used to light in the evenings vanished. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, almost peaceful. Her world, I later learned, unraveled quickly after that. She didn't return to work. Reeves resigned quietly, no announcement, no formal send-off. Word got around that they'd violated company policy. Some said there were financial repercussions. Others said it was personal conduct. No one asked me directly, but I knew the whispers were enough. A friend who still worked in her circle told me Brooke's reputation had taken a hit she wouldn't recover from. The leadership she'd built her image on, the professionalism, the poised presentations, it all cracked under the weight of a single public exposure. It didn't help that she tried to spin it. Apparently she claimed, at least once, that the rooftop kiss was symbolic, that it was part of a marketing pitch, something theatrical. But the story didn't land, because too many people had seen the way she smiled that night, the way she leaned into Reeves' hand, and none of that could be rehearsed. It wasn't just her career that collapsed. It was the version of herself she'd curated so carefully, the capable professional, the loyal partner, the woman in control. What remained was someone she didn't recognize anymore. And that, I think, is what broke her the most. Not losing me, not even losing the job, but losing the illusion. We met a week later. She looked wrecked, eyes swollen, voice hoarse. She held the bracelet like it hurt to touch. It wasn't serious, she said. Just a game. I thought you didn't see me anymore. I let her talk. No anger, no comfort. Just silence. The person in front of me wasn't my wife. It was someone who mistook deception for drama, manipulation for passion. Her words didn't change anything. The truth had already happened. A month later, she moved out for good. No yelling. No final plea. Just silence and the echo of a door closing behind her. The divorce went smooth, clean-cut. I stayed in the house. The quiet, once unbearable, felt like peace. Weeks later, I met Ellie, a literature teacher who spoke plainly and never hid behind half-truths. We walked by the river. We read. And for the first time in years, I felt still. Brooke's story didn't end in fire. It ended in freedom.